'cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave.
The report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 4. Each day for the remainder of the first session of the 119th Congress shall not constitute a calendar day for purposes of Section 202 of the National Emergency Act 50 U.S.C. 1622 with respect to a joint resolution terminating a national emergency declared by the President on February 1, 2025.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purposes of debate only. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are here to debate the rule providing for consideration for H.J. Res. 25, H.R. 1156, and the continuing resolution. The rule provides for H.J. Res. 25 and H.R. 1156 to be considered under a closed rule. 1 hour of debate for each bill shall be equally divided and controlled by the chair and the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee for their designees. The rule provides for a motion to recommit for both bills. The rule also provides for H.R. 1968 to be considered under a closed rule. 1 hour of debate shall be equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Appropriations Committee or their designees. The rule provides for 1 motion to recommit for this bill. Mr. Speaker, House Republicans want to keep America open for business. I would like to believe nobody in this chamber wants a government shutdown. And the bill we are considering today would keep the government fully funded through September 30th. This will ensure that there are no disruptions to veterans' health care services and benefits or to Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. It invests in defense personnel with the largest pay raise for junior enlisted troops in over 40 years. And it includes funding for the Toxic Exposures Fund to treat veterans who have experienced service-related exposure to toxic substances. This bill fully funds the program that provides key nutrition assistance for mothers, infants, and children, and increases funding for the WIC program, and it increases funding for the FAA. There are no poison pills in this bill. It is a clean CR that fully funds the government. And a shutdown would mean small businesses cannot get their federal loans, national parks would close, and assistance programs for family would quickly run out. There's nothing controversial in here for my Democratic colleagues to vote against, but I am certain many of them will. You see, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have taken to fear-mongering. They are okay with the chaos of a government shutdown because they cannot see past their blind hatred of President Trump. We are also here today to discuss legislation to repeal a misguided Biden rule that requires decentralization finance platforms to file a Form 1099-DA. This would include disclosing taxpayer information and transaction details these platforms currently do not collect. This rule demonstrates a lack of understanding about how decentralized currencies and their platforms they are traded on actually work. Misguided policies like this need to be repealed, and that is what the CRA will do. Finally, we're here to debate the Pandemic Unemployment Fraud Enforcement Act, which was introduced by the Ways and Means Chairman, Mr. Jason Smith, to extend the statute of limitations for prosecuting unemployment insurance fraud that took place under the CARES Act. Currently, the statute of limitations is 5 years, which means many of these would expire at the end of this month. Unfortunately, we saw a wide range of fraud and abuse take place in this federally funded unemployment insurance program, and more time is needed to root it all out. This bill, which extends the statute of limitations to 10 years, is a clear example of the House's commitment to removing waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government. Anyone who is serious about protecting taxpayer dollars should agree that simply giving law enforcement the ability to continue to investigate and prosecute fraudsters is a common sense proposal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I reserve.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentlewoman from Minnesota for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, as we speak, prices are going up, inflation is up, groceries are up. I saw eggs for $10 recently. Used car prices are up, other than Teslas. Those seem much cheaper these days for some reason. Energy prices are up 25% in the gentlelady's home state of Minnesota. 25% energy price increases for her constituents thanks to Trump's tariffs that she is supporting by bringing this rule to the floor. Boy, I'm just glad she's not my representative. Meanwhile, Elon Musk was on Fox Business this morning. He's not talking about food prices or energy prices. He's talking about how he wants to, quote, eliminate entitlements.
No.
This is the guy that calls Social Security a Ponzi scheme. The guy that's laying off people at Social Security offices already. Maybe Elon doesn't know this, but Social Security is not an entitlement. It's a program that people have spent their entire life paying into. Shame on him. Maybe Elon needs to watch the news instead of going on it, because you know what else is going down, Mr. Speaker?
Right.
Consumer confidence. People are waking up to the fact that Trump's trade war is going to hurt them in their pocketbooks. The stock market is going down. People in this country are starting to panic because their retirement accounts are dropping.
Causing panic.
Planes are going down. We've had several major accidents, several close calls, and we just learned that Elon Musk, the guy whose rocket just exploded in midair this weekend, wants to fire air traffic controllers. Make that make sense. And Republicans are doing nothing about any of it. Trump spent 2 minutes in his 2-hour lecture last week talking about lowering prices. 2 minutes. Now Republicans bring to the floor this CR, basically a blank check to Trump and Musk that says, keep doing what you're doing, we're all fine with it. No way, no way. My Republican friends want to pretend like this is a clean CR. It's 99 pages, for God's sake. A CR is pretty simple. The government gets funded at the same levels. Calling this CR clean is laughable. This bill cuts health care for veterans, $23 billion ripped away from veterans exposed to burn pits and Agent Orange. This bill defunds the police. I guess my Republican friends only care about the police when they need their votes, because this CR takes money away from the police. You know what's another word for taking money away? Defunding. This CR helps fire thousands of Social Security workers, forcing seniors to wait longer for their benefits that they have earned.
Perfect time to buy.
That is what House Republicans are trying to jam through on the floor right now. And the brazenness that Musk and Trump have when going after Social Security takes my breath away. They tried to close down a Social Security office in Chairman Tom Cole's district in Oklahoma. That's nuts. He's one of the most senior Republicans in Congress, a Republican, chairman of the Appropriations Committee, and Elon went after his constituents. Now, Chairman Cole was able to stop it, but what about the rest of the country? God help you if your congressperson doesn't run a powerful committee, because that means there's nothing to stop Elon Musk from coming after your Social Security. And Republicans are really hoping, really hoping I don't bring up this last part. Guess what they tucked into this rule? Hoping that nobody would notice. They did this after everyone went home. They slipped in a little clause letting them escape from ever having to debate or vote on Trump's tariffs. Isn't that clever? Trump's trade war will result in one of the largest, if not the largest, tax increase on American families ever. And this rule gives him the ability to do it without a vote in Congress. I get it. They're already hiding from their voters, running away from their own town halls, slipping out the back doors because they're afraid of being held accountable by their own actions. But guess what, Mr. Speaker? People don't send us here to hide. They send us here to fight for them, and they send us here to vote. And Democrats are not going to be complicit in voting to screw over America's veterans. We are not going to be complicit in voting to screw over our senior citizens on Social Security. We're not going to be complicit in taking money away from first responders. And we're sure as hell not going to be silent when it comes to this administration's BS and their corruption. Because what we are going to do is we're going to show up in our communities. We're going to stand up for veterans. We're going to speak up for people on Medicaid and Social Security. And we're going to put up one hell of a fight when it comes to the middle class families who are counting on us to fight for them. I urge a no vote on the disgraceful rule, a no vote on the underlying legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to take a minute just to address one thing out of that entire rant, because it's categorically false. The Community-Oriented Policing Services, COPS program, maintains a consistent level under this CR. The only variation in levels reflect the removal of previously enacted FY24 community project funding allocations, which are separate from the main programming. Claims that the COPS program has been defunded to zero are categorically false. Unlike the Democrats, Republicans remain committed to supporting law enforcement and ensuring public safety. I just wanted to address that one thing, and I would also like to yield as much time as he may consume to my rules colleague from South Carolina.
The gentleman from the Palmetto State is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you so much. You know, it's really laughable, and as the listening audience and those watching on TV, to hear my good friend, Mr. McGovern, talk about defunding the police. They're the party that wanted to defund the police. Their vice presidential candidate put up money to pay the rioters to get out of jail. He talks about the military. We've had 4 years of a Biden administration that ran the military off with the wokeness and DEI. Enrollments are up at record levels. President Trump has been in office now for, 49 days? Look what he's done. The fact that he mentioned cutting Social Security. There's nothing about Social Security that's in this bill. He mentions, I guess we'll mention cutting Medicaid. There's nothing about cutting Medicaid in here. So what they're doing is just using scare tactics, but the American people aren't buying it. They had 4 years to have their way with the government, and look what it brought. High taxes, high gas prices, high egg prices. Why? Why did the 77 million vote them out of office? Because of their policies. And President Trump in 49 days is bringing it back. If they get back in control, the main thing they will try to get a concession on is to defund. They keep saying the billionaire Elon Musk. I'm sorry, Elon Musk didn't make it from government. He made it from producing a product. And guess what he has had the mind and the genius to find? They support these things that he found in the different agencies, mainly leading off of the USAID. And I want everybody to listen to see if you agree with this. For the taxpayers, what Elon Musk found, $2 billion, which was part of a greenhouse gas emission fund. Guess where it went? Stacey Abrams. Is that where the taxpayers want their money spent? $1 million to Social Security's administration's Gen X initiative marker. Is that where the taxpayers want their money to go? $45 million diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarship in Burma. In Burma. How does that work? 182 million health and human services contracts, including 168,000 for an Anthony Fauci exhibit at the NIH. Folks, this would be funny if it wasn't so serious. 2.5 million to promote inclusion in Vietnam. I'm not going to waste the time, but this is just a short list of how this president under Elon Musk is identifying waste, fraud, and abuse. And to all the things that you're saying are just not true. I sat through this. You mentioned this was like needles in your eyes. Hearing you say these things is worse than that because it's just untrue. What this bill does, it extends the funding, and I'm typically not for CRs. There's no way to do business. But extends funding with fixed spending of 2024 levels. It includes anomalies requested by the Trump administration to support immigration enforcement efforts, to deport criminals. Their party was the one that opened the gates to America. How's that working out? How about the deaths? And we had the mothers and fathers in this audience. Guess who didn't stand? Anybody in your party. No one didn't have the decency to stand up for the little boy with cancer who wanted to be a police officer. These total anomalies, which increase defense discretionary spending by $6 billion, it cuts non-defense discretionary spending by $13 billion. It reduces the overall federal spending for fiscal year 25 below the 24 levels. And guess what? Y'all remember the 87,000 IRS agents that are going to harass the taxpayers? This bill cuts $20 billion out of it. It does away with it. And this president is just getting started. I doubt we will have any support from the Democrat side, which I don't expect. This bill is going to pass, and the country is in better shape. You had your time 4 years ago. And how did that work out for the American people? Not too good. I fully support this bill, and Madam Chairman, I yield the balance of my time.
Reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman wants to talk about grocery prices. Read the room, man. Or better yet, visit a grocery store. Give me a break. Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to bring up H.R. 1974, a short-term continuing resolution that keeps the government funded through April 11th. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record, along with any extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. And to discuss our proposal, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota, Ms. McCollum.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the full-year CR. This bill abdicates our constitutional responsibilities to direct funding, and it gives it to Elon Musk and Mr. Trump. It undercuts the separations of powers in our Constitution. This CR cuts $13 billion from domestic priorities that Americans rely on. I'm going to talk specifically about $2.2 billion in reduction to health care. Here's a few examples. $280 million cut from NIH means cuts to research and clinical trials. Fewer lives will be saved. The bill removes congressional directions for CDC funding. That's how we detect and control health threats at home and from abroad. And there's an $891 million reduction to HHS investments. That will lead to more healthcare workforce shortages. The ramifications of these cuts will be felt everywhere, but especially to the most vulnerable Americans who are already hurting from the illegal cuts Elon Musk is making to healthcare grants and research. $17 million reduction to Indian Health Service facilities, and they're already falling apart. The bill shortchanges our veterans by failing to include 22 billion in advanced funding for VA toxic exposure. That jeopardizes the health care of our veterans exposed to burn pits and Agent Orange. And the bill cuts DoD medical research by over $850 million. This will obstruct new cures for cancer and infectious diseases. These just aren't funding cuts. The Republicans are cutting cures and treatments and hopes for healthier American families. And this is before we know what Elon Musk has in store for Social Security disability, Medicaid, and Medicare. A full-year CR is a disaster, and it does not have to be this way. The American people deserve better. I urge my colleagues to defeat this PQ and bring forward a short-term CR, and let's get to work. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to my colleague on the Rules Committee from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady. So here we are again. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle who constantly always talk about the need to support a CR to, quote, keep the lights on, now find themselves in the curious position of not wanting to have the lights on because they don't like what's happening. So they don't want the lights to be on because you've got people in the executive branch who have taken seriously the election mandate that was given to the President of the United States to end the absurdity of nonstop wasteful spending, the ridiculousness of expenditures like $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. Like, that's the kind of stuff that make the American people's head explode. And there are dozens, hundreds of these examples. I could sit here and list. And the fact is, this stuff is getting exposed in real time. The American people are seeing it. And now my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are trying to run from it. That's why they don't like this bill. That's why they want to have a shutdown after all of these years of decrying the possibility of shutdown. You're seeing all of the news today talking about the possibility of a Schumer shutdown. You're talking about, there's news article after news article. The Hill, February 11th, Democrats step up talk about using shutdown as leverage against Donald Trump. Democrat senators who request anonymity said that March 14th deadline may be the best leverage they have. Democrats in Congress see potential shutdown as leverage to counter Trump. U.S. Congress, The Guardian, February 15th. I could insert into the record dozens of these stories because the fact of the matter is the gig is up. Much like the American people were able to see the absolute and rampant corruption in our education system during COVID, when everything was shut down and they were watching their kids and they saw these screens and they said, what on earth are they being taught? And suddenly the American people saw the reality of our broken education system. They saw the fraud that was perpetrated by Anthony Fauci on the American people and shutting down their way of life. And now you've got Democrats who are now being exposed for having continuously funded this largesse and this bureaucracy that is completely indefensible. The American people are tired of having their tax dollars taken and dollars being borrowed by an endless stream of borrowing by this Congress. And now you've got a Congress that is willing to work with the president to stop it, to stand up and say enough. And what are we putting in place? Oh, the horror, a spending freeze? Oh, can you believe it? That the federal government might need to tighten its belt and have a spending freeze? And then my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to bring out these parade of horribles. Somehow that is a massive number of cuts. Because only in Washington is that a cut. When you've got a spending freeze and holding basically spending in check from 2024. And we have a bill that, by the way, pulls out earmarks, which are often replete with special wish lists. By the way, that's both sides of the aisle. And we've got a bill here that is going to hold spending in check to allow us to do our job for the fiscal year 26 appropriation cycle between now and September. By the way, it was Republicans who passed 5 appropriations bills off of the House floor last year and 12 appropriations bills out of committee last year. The previous year, it was Republicans who passed 7 off the floor and all 12 out of committee. The Democrat-led Senate passed 0. You want to know why we are where we are right now? It's because our Democratic colleagues in the Senate passed 0 appropriations bills, not 1. So we came in here. Now the Republicans have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. And now we're trying to get things moving in the right direction. And our Democrat colleagues don't want to have any part of it. So we're putting forward a common sense measure that, look, I understand why some of my conservative flank fiscal conservatives have concerns about a CR. I don't love CRs. But when you can have a CR that extends spending at 2024 levels for the next 6 months and empowers the president to be able to continue to do what they're doing, shining the light on spending restraint, shining the light on waste, so that we can do our job and implement that. And by the way, I'll say that to both sides of the aisle. Both sides of the aisle need to take in that information and implement it when we do appropriations this year. Move spending down, eliminate the waste, try to do something about the fact that in 2019, our entire budget was $4.5 trillion. Today, it is $7 trillion. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have no answer to that besides, magic tax cuts. You could literally confiscate the wealth of the wealthiest 1% of America and not dent what we've got in terms of $36 trillion in debt, when you would kill jobs and destroy the economy in the process. But that's the only answer my colleagues have to $7 trillion in spending. The fact of the matter is this CR is responsible. It's fiscally appropriate. It'll leave the lights on so that the president and Doge and Elon and Russ Voter and OMB can do their job. And I hope that my colleagues on this side of the aisle will support the rule. I yield back.
Gentlelady reserves.
Reserved.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, that was an awful lot of words from the gentleman to announce that he's caving and changing his position and finally supporting a CR. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Moskowitz.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, that's exactly right. It's CR Day on Capitol Hill. And what is going on with Republicans? I mean, President Trump puts out a tweet and says, please, and all of a sudden, just flip-flops. But you know what? Let me do some mean tweets about how you feel about CRs when you're in the minority only. And the first one actually is from the gentleman from Texas. And it says, it's Groundhog Day in the House chamber, all the time, every day. Yet again, spending money we don't have, apparently only when he's in the minority. Another one from a colleague, comparing continuing resolutions to attending a P. Diddy party. In any given year, another colleague says, if Congress raises the debt ceiling, passes a CR, and rams through an omnibus bill, no member of Congress should receive a paycheck. That's awkward for you guys. How many of you are going to give back your paycheck? Another colleague, I've never voted for a CR. You sent me to Congress to cut wasteful spending, and I'm a woman of my word. You can guess who that is. And this one, this is my favorite. What does a CR stand for? It stands for capitulating Republicans, caving Republicans, said by a Republican. And you know what? I'm going to miss the Never CR group. I mean, they were great, but they're breaking up. And it was great to see them live while they were together. They had lots of fans. I'm going to miss them. I mean, they were mostly a boy band, okay? Some of them are going solo. Appears it's only Thomas Massey. But you know what? Something tells me there'll be a reunion, but only when they're in the minority. And to quote Representative Massey, talking about Republicans, I guess deficits only matter when we're in the minority. So listen, go home to your families, turn in your voting cards, give Trump the gavel, because that is what has happened to your entire party. You don't need to be here. He tells you to do something, you jump. And so what's going on in the world? Another representative brought what's going on in the world in the last 30 days. Well, let's see. Egg prices are up. Goods are up. Stock market is down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back to gentleman from Massachusetts. Reserve.
Reserve.
Mr. Speaker,
Members are admonished for the second time and reminded to address their remarks to the chair. Thank you.
and thank you,
Gentlelady
Mr.
from
Speaker.
Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that reminder. I appreciate that. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield 2 minutes again from my to my colleague from the Rules Committee from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, I appreciate the sudden religion my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have found on spending restraint and the need to cut spending. I look forward to all the proposals that my colleagues will put forward on reducing significant amounts of spending and waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'll look for that press conference they'll no doubt have sometime this week. I would also note that when we talk about continuing resolutions, what my colleague just failed to mention was the fact that literally every single Democrat voted for the CR that we just had in December. Like literally every single Democrat except for one who I think maybe took a present vote. The fact of the matter is, it has nothing to do with that. The fact of the matter is, for those of us who do not like CRs as a general principle, the fact is because Democrats literally wouldn't pass an appropriations bill out of the Senate, we're left doing the cleanup work of trying to figure out how to move forward while we have an administration that isn't at war with its own people. When the previous administration was blatantly disregarding the well-being of the American people, to have wide open borders, letting fentanyl and letting all manners of evil come into our country, leading to the death and destruction of the people that I represent, people like Jocelyn Nungare, who lost her life to the hands of Tren de Aragua, because Joe Biden decided it was more important to let millions of people into this country in violation of our laws, endangering the people. That's why our bill has additional funding for ICE, to make sure that we've got the beds to undo the damage that the Biden regime has carried out on the American people. Those are the actual facts. The fact of the matter is, no, you don't want to have a CR to continue the funding under Joe Biden, because Joe Biden was at war with the American people. Now we have a president and administration that is trying to do the job that they sent him there to do. Secure the border of the United States, hold back spending, eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, get this economy going again, get the regulations out of the way of the American people, and do the job they want us to do. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady reserve. The chairs of each respective side are advised that the gentlelady from Minnesota has 13 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Massachusetts has 20 and a half minutes remaining. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, forget about it. I'm not going to respond. I just want to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Mr. Meeks.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
The fact of the matter is, Donald Trump's policies are collapsing our economy. Unemployment is rising. The NASDAQ had its worst days since the COVID crash. Millions of dollars in retirement savings have been wiped out in just weeks. And the reason is
don't tie your
the Trump
retirement
administration's reckless tariffs on our allies. To impose these tariffs, Trump declared a made-up national emergency under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. But the law has a safeguard. Any member can force a vote to terminate the emergency. But what happened? Speaker Johnson doesn't want to vote. Why? Because it would force Republicans to go on the record about Trump's tariffs. So instead, Speaker Johnson has rewritten the law in real time. And here's what the rule says, and I quote, "Each day for the remainder of the first session of the 119th Congress shall not constitute a calendar day." What? If you don't think that makes any sense, neither do I. House Republicans are declaring that the days are no longer days and that time has literally stopped. The Speaker is petrified that members of this House will actually have to take a vote on lowering costs on the American people. This is what the American people elected us to do. But now, because it's Donald Trump's tariffs and Republicans would have to take a tough vote, Speaker Johnson is stopping us from voting. If Congress can't act to lower prices, protect retirement savings, and hold the president accountable, what are we even here? What are we doing here? A yes vote on this rule is a vote for Trump's tariffs. A yes vote on this vote, is a vote to keep prices high for American families. A yes vote is a vote to block Congress from doing its job to lower costs. If you actually care about lowering costs, you should vote no on this rule. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Wisconsin is recognized. Minnesota.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You were close. But Mr. Speaker, I just want to point out, Democrats love to claim foul when Republicans for shutting off national emergencies, but they're cherry picking the facts. Let's take a look back at when they were in charge in the 117th Congress. They never allowed a vote on terminating the COVID national emergency. Mr. Gosar introduced 2 separate national emergency disapproval resolutions, and Democrats, who were in control at the time, not only shut off consideration of those resolutions without a single vote, they shut them off for the remaining 18 months of the Congress. Even 2 years after the COVID emergency was declared, Democrats still silenced the voices of Republicans who wanted to take a vote. What's that saying again? Rules for thee, but not for me. I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentlelady just conceded that this rule would prevent the House from voting on Trump's tariffs, thereby resulting in the biggest tax increase on middle-class families that we've ever seen. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Mexico, Ms. Stansbury.
The gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes when I'm standing in this chamber, I literally cannot believe my ears. And I have to say that today is one of those days, because as we stand here on the floor today, I am hearing members on the other side of the aisle who said they would never vote for a continuing resolution, that they